Who are the economic hitmen? Are these third world countries put into debt in order to be controlled by corporations? Back in the old days, for you to expand an empire, you had to assemble troops and personnel to take over the territory. That came with a lot of problems. Spending of a lot of money, loss of soldiers, hatred by the local people.
Both Latin America and Africa, we have these governments that have a long history of realizing that they can get rich by collaborating with colonial powers. We were always very careful not to break any of the anti-corruption laws of the United States, but there's so many great ways to do it without breaking the laws. At the same time, so you're saying, hey, in this hand, I got a few $1 billion for you and your buddies. In this hand, I got a gun. Now, I didn't ever carry a gun, but I knew the people we call the jackals were right behind us. And these are CIA assets who overthrow governments.
This is how it works. Have you imagined how these deals are made?
We economic hitmen really have been the ones responsible for creating this first truly global empire. And we work many different ways. But perhaps the most common is that we will identify a country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sister organizations. But the money never actually goes to the country. Instead, it goes to our big corporations to build infrastructure projects in that country, power plants, industrial parks, ports, things that benefit a few rich people in that country, in addition to our corporation. Iraq actually is a perfect example of the way the whole system works. So we economic hitmen are the first line of defense. We go in and we try to corrupt governments and get them to accept these huge loans, which we then use as leverage to basically own them. If we fail, as I failed in Panama with Omar Torrijos and in Ecuador with Jaime Roldos, men who refuse to be corrupted, then the second line of defense is we send in the jackals. And the jackals either overthrow governments or they assassinate. And once that happens and a new government comes in, and boy, it's going to toe the line because the new president knows what will happen if he doesn't. In the case of Iraq, both of those things failed. Economic hitmen were not able to get through to Saddam Hussein. We tried very hard. We tried to get him to accept a deal very similar to what the House of Saud had accepted in Saudi Arabia, but he wouldn't accept it. And so the jackals went in to take him out. They couldn't do it. His security was very good. After all, he had one time worked for the CIA. He'd been hired to assassinate a former president of Iraq and failed. He knew the system. So in '91 we send in the troops and we take out the Iraqi military. So we assume at that point that Saddam Hussein is going to come around. We could have taken him out, of course, at that time, but we didn't want to. He's the kind of strong man we like. He controls his people. We thought he could control the Kurds and keep the Iranians in their border and keep pumping oil for us. And that once we took out his military, now he's going to come around. So the economic hitmen go back in the 90s without success. If they'd had success, he'd still be running the country. We'd be selling him all the fighter jets he wants and everything else he wants. But they couldn't, they didn't have success. The jackals couldn't take him out again, so we sent the military in once again, and this time we did the complete job and took him out, and in the process created for ourselves some very, very lucrative construction deals. We had to reconstruct a country that we'd essentially destroyed, which is a pretty good deal if you own construction companies, big ones. So, Iraq shows the three stages. The economic hitmen failed there, the jackals failed there, and as a final measure, the military goes in.
this to the president, and you basically say, hey, Mr. President, if you take this loan on, and it's going to really benefit you and your family and all your friends, because your family and your friends own the industries. They own the banks, they own the commercial establishments, and all of those are going to benefit from infrastructure.
We third world countries are already living in the deficit of our national budget plan. Where shall we get the money to repay all these huge and unnecessary loans that only benefit the presidents and their immediate associates? Failure to pay the loan, the economic hitmans are happy, because your currency will be devalued against the dollar or against any other big currency. Exploitation of resources at a cheaper price. The oil, the gold, the silver will be exploited at a cheaper price, whereby your people won't benefit from it. Privatization of government parastatals.
For example, in 1999, the World Bank insisted that the Bolivian government sell the public water system of its third largest city to a subsidy of the U.S. corporation Bechtel. As soon as this occurred, water bills for the already impoverished local residents skyrocketed. It wasn't until after a full-blown revolt by the people that the Bechtel contract was nullified.
Money for education, healthcare will be channeled to pay this huge big loan. The business model is very simple here. Find a third world country like Uganda. That's 1. 2. Go to that country and look for its resources, and if it's resourceful enough, have a corporation or a big entity to go into that country to give it a loan. For example, IMF or World Bank. Let it come into that country and give it a huge loan to build a dam or a road or a highway or a park, whereby the rich only benefit from it. 3. Tell the president how he's going to benefit from such a park and how it is going to create jobs from building a highway or a dam that is going to supply electricity. If the president does not agree, that's where the jackals come in. These ones assassinate the president. They will either kill him or form a military coup in his country.